Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 120 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am your host, Brent Coley, an educator in beautiful Southern California, currently rainy Southern California.
Very rainy.
Very rainy, but we're not complaining because anyone listening outside of California is like, it's March, shut up, it's still very cold. So anyway, I am pumped. First of all, it's been a long time since between episodes. I'm super excited. I've got good friend and colleague, John Fox. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I've thought about this for a while.
I've been waiting for a long time to be asked, about 119 episodes.
He's been waiting for the invite. It finally came. No.
Organically.
So, but AI. I want to talk about AI. That is the rage. We're getting ready to go to a conference. About 60, 70% of the sessions have AI in the title. And you are, first of all, who is John Fox? Give anyone listening who is not a friend of ours, who is John? Give us a little brief.
All right, friends and enemies. I am a father of two. I'm married to a wonderful educator, a lifetime friend of mine. And I have taught in the classroom at the elementary middle school setting and served many years as a site administrator and principal in both elementary and middle. And currently I work as an educational technology coordinator in sunny Southern California as well. And I've just really enjoyed my journey in education.
Yep. Yes. John and I work just down the hall from each other. So, and John, you do a ton of amazing work. You have taught me so much over the last few years since I've been down at the district office, and it's like I need to tap into the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have in terms of AI. So I'm thinking, for anyone listening right now, I want you to share, if you would, some examples of, let's say somebody's like, I've heard AI, but how do I start? I want to wade into the waters, not cannonball in. I'm not ready for that. Maybe or maybe they are, but if they're not, like, can you give us a couple examples of how could a teacher how can they get their feet wet with AI?
Well, I will say my journey has been quite a few years with AI, and AI scares me.
Mm-hmm.
It also scares me not to share what I know now with educators who I care a lot about. And my journey's gone from one where I had a lot of reservation to now where I feel I cannot be reserved to share these tools and tips for teachers because that's unethical. And so we can do it in a way that is ethical, but also help teachers. And in my role, I have the pleasure to really say yes a lot to educators and teachers when it comes to educational tools. And I can honestly say that this tool, artificial intelligence, and all the many facets of artificial intelligence is the one thing that I can honestly say that I could give to someone that will change and save them time, change their life, change their practices, really help them. And I can't say that for every tool. And I've taught a lot of different tools, and that might be, hey, you can make things look cool, more engaging to students, or you can do really fantastic or more organized, or you can share with your colleagues, but it requires more work. Mm-hmm. This is the only thing I've ever touched that I can honestly say, this might make the experience that much better. And Brett and I sit here as former administrators, former teachers,
yes,
friends for years, and we know it's not getting any easier.
No.
And we are part of the problem.
Yeah.
And we recognize that. And so I love this opportunity just to share that there are things. And just speaking of that, let's talk about just teachers. A lot of times we get into grade levels, we get into subjects where we don't have a lot of expertise, or maybe we've touched on it when we were back in school and now things are a lot different. The ability to take a large amount of text that's going to be important for me to teach, and to be able to break it down into chunks that I can understand before I share that with my students is huge. And you're going to hear me talking about this tool called Notebook LM from Google. And it is truly a walled garden. It's where I can control, as the educator, or outside of education, but I can control the inputs. I can control the articles, the texts, the websites, the information that the AI is using. And what it'll do for me is it'll break it down into a briefing document. It'll break it down into a study guide. So now I can take chapter 1 of a book that I read years ago, and I know I got to teach it again, and I can dump that into this safe AI and get myself a briefing document.
And when you say walled garden, I know what you mean, but just to like, because chat GPT and things like that, it's pulling from everything that's out there.
Absolutely.
And if you were to put in confidential information, you don't want to do that because now it's out there. When you say walled garden, you're talking it's walled. It's not
Absolutely.
out there for everybody.
And this is
to see.
coming straight from Google. This is from the mouths of our representatives here at Google. And we're not getting paid by Google. We don't even have a full Google account in our district yet. I'm just sharing this with you because you need to hear it. Yes, AI is trained on the internet. Most of what's on the internet is not great. In fact, when the internet first came out, most of the industries that put a lot of information out there weren't ones you would see or allow in education. A walled garden is where we can say that it's not the model, the engine behind it is not learning from what I put in it, because AI models do learn from us. It wants to learn from your prompts, and it is a large language model,
Sure.
and it wants to know how people are using it because it'll change the algorithms. It needs to stay relevant. So it's built into the algorithms to stay relevant to the users. A walled garden is one where it says, nope, this is not going to go outside. Whatever you want me to use as far as information, I'm going to use. And if you ask me a question or want to do something that with information you have not given me, I'm not going anywhere. And it'll tell you that.
Which is, I just wanted to reiterate that for anyone who's listening. I mean, myself, you, and I mean, because we've talked about the potential pitfalls. Is if you're like, is it safe? Like, if I put this in, is it going to be out? No. This particular tool, Notebook LM, if you use it, it's walled.
Yes, and there are other tools out there, and I think that's important that we
Sure.
identify as educators what tools are safe and what tools are not. That is a very important role that we have.
Yeah.
And we do that all the time with all kinds of things. We preview our YouTube videos that we put up just for students because YouTube
We should.
we should. YouTube's a great resource. It also has got terrible stuff on
and
it.
it's got ads at the end.
Yes. But
So,
we should do that as
100%.
educators. There are
so Notebook LM. So
yeah, that's one of them for sure.
So like, give me an example. Like, so let's use the example of the
Of a
book.
teacher. Yeah. So
You have a book, but talk about the podcast feature of that.
Oh yeah, that there's a podcast feature as well, and that is one that I'll explain because that's where AI gets a little tricky. If you were to take ChatGPT, which is a very powerful model, and you were to ask the same questions that you ask inside of Notebook LM, and let's say that you grab the Declaration of Independence and you grab it word for word, and you put that in ChatGPT and you ask it to create a study guide, there is a chance that it will go outside of that document. It'll pull in things that are not there. And as you chat with ChatGPT, you can get it outside of that area. You can tell all you want that I want you to stay in this character. But often I have found, and I've done a lot of AI research and studying and application, is I can get it outside of that. And in a Notebook LM, it stays inside of that area in that walled garden. However, it does have a feature, the podcast feature. And it's mind-blowing. It is very engaging for students. And also it is the one thing inside of Notebook LM where it elaborates.
Yeah.
It does bring in, kind of current podcast type of flow with conversation. And so it does ad lib a little bit.
Okay.
That's a good thing for student engagement. But as I've experimented with it on the chat feature, for instance, I brought in the Declaration of Independence and I began to ask it questions from the text. And when I started to ask it questions about the Magna Carta, for all you history lovers out there, it wouldn't let me. It said, hey, look, I can't compare anything to the Magna Carta because I don't have that information. So sorry. Well, when I made the podcast, it was a fantastic podcast about the Declaration of Independence. It hit all the major points and would be very engaging with students.
And when you say make the podcast, I'm going to...
I clicked a button.
Hit pause and back up. What Notebook LM does is you give it a page
Anything you
document,
want.
anything you want. And what it will do within a matter of minutes is it will take two people, computer generated,
Which you can't tell.
that's you, and you cannot tell it is two people. It sounds like, hey everybody, my name's Bill and my name's Sally, and they ad lib, they riff back and forth based on what you have done. It is mind. I mean,
It is.
just in terms of, you give it the document and say make a podcast, and it will take two people, computer generate two people. It's that. But to your point, it does ad lib a little
It
bit.
does.
Like
Yes.
I
And
gave an example of a notebook. Excuse me, a note taking technique in social studies that I used to use with my students. It was about a page and a half, 2-page document that shows how you do it. It created, I think, a 14-minute podcast on a page and a half PDF. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Now, by minute 7 or 8, it was starting to, what you mentioned, to ad lib a little bit. And it wasn't
part of the algorithm.
It wasn't anything inappropriate, but it was like, okay, maybe that's
a stretch.
It's stretching a little bit.
Well, and they have also in Notebook LM, and I encourage you just to go to notebooklm.com and log in with your Google account. It's free. You got to try it. Yeah. And when you there's another feature now where you can interact with the podcasters like we're doing now.
Yes.
Where you can use your microphone and you can listen to the podcast and you can hit interact. And the podcast will stop and it'll say, "Oh, we have a caller coming in. What's going on?" And you can ask it a question. Now, to me, that's just another wow factor of AI. However, I was able to ask it that Magna Carta question, and it did reference the real Magna Carta. It knew about the real Magna Carta. So it has its own. It has a lot of information already there that's in the background in the learning model. It's again, it's not pulling from the internet, so it's not pulling my information out. But what it did was it tried to stay relevant, and it didn't want to shut me down and say, "I'm sorry, we don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
And so in that case, I knew I could get outside of the document, and so it would be a feature I would use sparingly. It would be one where I might put an historical document, an article on how to do something, have it, and then have students critique the podcast. Yeah. But I will tell you right now, if I was to teach again, I would absolutely play that podcast, which you can download, by the way, and have forever.
Yeah.
The last time I checked, the Declaration of Independence isn't changing. So that podcast is going to stay relevant. And it was a 2-second download as an MP3. And I would have my students listen to that podcast and then dive into the text and then do activities. So it can be a great tool.
I used to, when I was teaching, and we've talked about, I used to create what I called study casts, social studies, science tests. I would take the notes. I would sit down at a computer and I would basically say, "Hey, boys and girls, this is Mr. Coley. I'm going to help you study." And I would just talk about the notes. I would share anecdotal stories that maybe weren't in their notes, but we talked about in class. 10 minutes. I used to burn it on a CD, which dates how the dating of that. And then it would just give them another way to study for a test. What Notebook LM can do is it would save the teacher. Going back to your original point, this is actually something that could save teachers time, because now if you just took your notes or took the chapter from the books and uploaded it, it's going to make the podcast for you. And I'm going to tell you, it's better than what I did. It's a lot more engaging. Not that I would like.
I don't know if they could do what we're doing right now because we're just extremely professional. But yeah, it might, you guys.
So that's an example of if you're a classroom teacher,
yes,
that you could make study casts or something to potentially help. But to your point, maybe you do it and you listen with the kids as a review in class, and you have them critique it. Now, anyone notice anything that maybe it stretched a little bit? I mean, again, it's that critical thinking that you
I'll we can take any example when you talk about something you put into Notebook LM or any other AI models for that matter, and ask it to do some pretty creative things. But there's so many ways that if you think about it as educators, and that's the one thing about AI, and that's where I just want to shout it from the mountaintop, is as educators, we continue to age, the gap between us and our students grows 1 year every year. When I taught fifth grade for 4 years in a row,
Yep.
my kids kept getting older, but the gap
Your
between
new
me
kids were
and the
always changing.
generation continued to change.
Yeah.
And unless you plan on starting in kindergarten and teaching all the way to seniors, which none of us do, you're going to need to address the fact that what's relevant to you and your likes and what you understand and you're keeping track of in their world
Yeah.
is changing, and we cannot keep up with what our younger kids are doing. It's not possible. With AI, you can take topics that are so current for students, and maybe it's something that you're studying. Maybe you're an elementary teacher and you have Apple Day coming up, and you want to create a song about apples in a nursery rhyme. And you don't want to have to create that yourself unless you're an artist or something, but you could do it on the fly and have it create a poem or a nursery rhyme in whatever fashion you want about apples.
Which tool are you talking? ChatGPT?
ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini,
It
any one
doesn't
of
matter.
any one of those, and you just say, "Hey, I'm a first grade teacher. We're doing Apple Day. My kids love nursery rhymes. Can you give me, a couple lines of, a nursery rhyme? Maybe I want it to be like Mary Had a Little Lamb, or maybe there's one that you like that you or your kids have, learned over the years, and that's relevant at that time, or that shark song. I don't know what that was. Again, I'm getting
Baby shark.
There you go. And you could have it in that format.
that song.
The kids would be excited. And you can also take that same idea and just say, I'm teaching Apple Day and I'm responsible for all subjects. Shout out to all you elementary teachers out there. There's no harder working teacher ever. And say, I'm teaching apples and I'd like to have a variety of activities that are hands-on that cover all of our standards. And I want to make sure I've got a social studies activity and a science activity and a math activity and, some reading. And it will create a lesson plan.
You include YouTube videos.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
And it'll give you YouTube links.
Yeah. It's almost like that wish list that you had when you were a new teacher and you're oh my gosh, how that veteran teacher know how to do that? Well, that veteran teacher has been in your shoes and found that video, right? And so you go and you grab that video.
Yeah.
It gives you that ability to access things that would have taken you years to figure out along the way. But I think that's for lesson planning for sure, Brent. AI is
It's the virtual mentor. It's the virtual induction support provider or whatever that you had down the hall. Hey, do you have a video on? Do you have a lesson on this? Now you just sit down at your computer and say, hey, do you, and literally you talk to it in whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT or whatever, you just ask it exactly the same way that you would and say please and thank you.
Yes.
So when the computers take over the world,
you're on the right side.
It will remember.
And let's, I want to bird walk just a little bit too, as I'm thinking about, my favorite teachers and I'm thinking about my favorite years in the classroom. And I think we can all agree, those of you listening and Brent right here, the teachers that knew you the best, that knew you and made relationships important in the classrooms were the classrooms that you gave it your best in and you remember the most. And we get one shot each year with these kids that you have. You get one shot with that class. Again, unless you're following them, chances are it's one shot.
Yeah.
If we're using AI to make some of those other things fast, efficient, and readily available to us, if we learn to use it as an assistant like that, what can we do with that extra time? We can dig into who are my kids. I'm spending more time, maybe just once a week, looking at a student profile, getting to know them, sending an email to parents, having the parents come in, things that are extra because you're so bogged down with needing to know those standards and teach those standards. It really does, if you think about it, make you a more dynamic and effective teacher.
Yeah.
Not just with a lesson planning. We're talking about being that teacher who makes that connection.
If it frees you, if the minutia that used to and has taken so much time, if that frees you up, it allows you to do the things that you want to do.
Sure.
That are going to make you, I love how you said that teacher. Because again, right now, if we say, who is that teacher for you listening right now? Who's the teacher that you remember? Who is your favorite teacher?
Yeah.
I pretty guarantee anyone right now, you're thinking of a name. And I can also guarantee it's not because they were great at teaching long division.
It's true.
It's not because it's because, like you said, John, they knew you. They took time
Mhm.
to build a relationship with you. They were engaging. Their class was fun. They made songs about that to Baby Shark tune or whatever. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's what they're going to remember. So
I mean, my last name is Fox. You know, I played on What Does the Fox Say? Like I played on that over, and my kids loved it, right? And it was simple. You know, it really was simple.
mhm.
Now we need to get, because Brett and I are both extremely passionate about
Yes.
just the teaching and learning and the experience as a teacher, and we've lived it. I want to get back to, if we
Go.
could, back to some of those tools, because I know that's what you want as listeners to to pull out of this. And I think about the use of the use for students when it comes to AI is obviously it's a very scary thing. It really is, and I say scary because we worry about students, all the different factors and obstacles that students have that stops them from learning. And cheating is one of those things, and it's a real thing, and it's a very, very easy thing with AI. I can go get answers, and it makes me sound like I know exactly what I'm talking about. And as an educator, you're responsible to assess where students are at.
Yeah.
And now you have this issue where you have, I don't know if it's
Is
truly
it
their
them?
words. Is it really them? I'm feeling insecure about how I'm grading them. And so it is a very, very huge problem. So part of it, we have to learn strategies to use AI correctly with students, teach them how to use it correctly, because if we don't, they will use it incorrectly.
Mhm.
Case in point, go in the grocery store and see any student, any baby on an iPad or in a restaurant. We all know it, right? When we hand our students those things and we say, here you go,
Yeah.
they will go and find out things that we didn't expect,
Mhm.
because there's no guidance with
Yeah.
that. And I think about our students, and one of the hardest parts for me as a writer was to develop that essential question, to get going. I had no problem digging into research and providing, support or arguing against, but the starting part was hard. And one great way to use AI for students is to have them find what they're passionate about. And let's say they're passionate about nature or forests, or animals or whatever that might be.
Mhm.
It might be a specific animal, and have them. But your task is that you wanted them to do some. One is to do some research and to maybe write an opinion essay or an argumentative essay on a said topic. But you're not telling the students, I want you to write it on this. You're giving them student choice. And you have them use AI to say to tell them or guide them, hey, put in your passions, tell it a little bit about yourself. Again, I would use something like Gemini for Teens for this, because
Mhm.
it's a safe AI
Yeah.
where students can put in their information and say, hey, I'm 14 years old. Eagles are my thing. I love not the Philadelphia Eagles, but
Sure.
like bald eagles, and talk about their passions, and what research is out there about
Mhm.
the whether it's the habitats or maybe the lack of habitats, or anything I can gather about eagles. Can you help me create like an essential question, and then provide me some links to some articles that are empirical, that are coming from reputable resources? You've now empowered your student to ask a very important question that's not doing all the work for them. What it's doing is maybe helping them find out an essential question to answer. And then it's saying, here are the articles to read. You can still have the student do the work of writing.
You're saving the time. I'm thinking back to the card cataloger when I was in college and we're having to go in the microfiche and
Oh yeah.
find the articles. I
You were
still had
tired before you started.
amen. You still had to go read the articles. You had to make the copies of them. What you're doing is you're cutting that time, like not even in half. You're give it, but like you said, I like it. They still have to read the articles.
Mhm.
They still have to do the work. You're just putting the information in their hands a lot more
Absolutely.
easily.
And kids want to be guided. They want to be taught
Mhm.
how to use this, and they want to be validated like, hey, AI is a real thing. I want you to learn how to use it
Yeah.
correctly. And I care enough to teach you how to do this, because you're going to use it as an adult.
Yeah.
And now but in my class, I want to hear your original thought on what you read,
Yeah.
because that's also important. And so you guide students through that. And that's a valuable experience for students to learn how to use AI. It
Mhm.
can go so far as you have a struggling reader who's done the writing process, And now you can say, hey, take your writing process and ask for some revision suggestions from the AI. Here's how you might do that. You would paste your article, your text in there, and then you would ask it specific questions. And then look at its feedback and analyze, is that feedback, is that really what you want to do? Or are you good with what you have? Again, students are evaluating. Students are using the AI as a thinking assistant. They're not having to do the work for them, but they're using that technology like we'd want teachers to use it, right? As an assistant. And I think too, what I would say is really important about any AI is it's not a Google search. We are very used to that. Google was a great thing for us, wasn't it, when it came out? And we as teachers had to go. I remember saying, gosh, I'm not the sage on the stage anymore. My students aren't going to learn just about the Civil War from me each year in 8th grade. They can Google it and get a video of some guy who's literally outperforming me in explaining the Civil War. So I got to stay relevant. And I think that's so important and a key now, because what we need to do as educators, as people outside of education, maybe support staff, or even as students, is we need to converse with it. It's not about the question that you ask. It's about questioning the result that you get. Here's an example.
Say that again.
I don't think I can. It's not about the question that you ask. It's about the questions that you ask with the results that you get.
Yes, questioning the result.
And I'm going to say also the demands that you ask AI. So here's an example. I'll go to any grade level. You insert your grade level. You insert the content, and you're looking for a 50-minute lesson plan that's got student-friendly activities. It's got maybe some prompts. It's got hands-on activities, whatever it is. And what you do is you ask it for that lesson plan first. You ask it for the essential questions that students that would be important for the students to know. You might ask it for the state standards that are with this, and write it into student-friendly language. I mean, all that stuff can be one question, okay, or one demand. But then what you do is you're going to get something. And if you're me, I ask it for it in a table. I demand it in a table format. Everybody, I love spreadsheets because it's logical. I can read in rows and columns. It's the way my brain works. So I always ask for all of my responses to be in table format.
That's a great tip for anyone who's
for sure.
Maybe that's your takeaway. If nothing else, I'm sure you're getting something else, because that's something that I did not do until very recently. It's like, be very specific. Give it to me in a table. Give it to me in bullet format. Give it to me numbered. Whatever, and it'll do.
Again, it's what you're thinking subconsciously. Is like what you're probably going to end up doing anyways as a teacher is putting it into a table format. You're going to put it into bullet notes. That's what you would have done, because that's how we've learned.
That's how we do it.
And it's organized.
It's organized.
So you ask for it. But then what happens then is, as an educator, you need to preview that. Whatever you get, you preview. And what you'll find is you'll see a lot of it's good. And there's some other parts where you're like, that student activity, I like the idea, but I need kind of a step-by-step how to do that. So you reprompt in that same thread and you say, all of it looks good except for that science activity, that hands-on activity. Could you provide another example, and also provide 5 steps in student-friendly language on how to accomplish that? And then you just keep going. You keep going with these, and I call it massaging the AI. You're having a full-on conversation with the AI assistant until what you get at the end is exactly what you dreamed of. And so it's not a Google search, because you can't do that in Google.
Because you search the same thing, you're going to more than likely, and even if you change the search terms slightly, more than likely you're going to get these same results. But like you said, it may be iterative. Is that the right word?
Yes.
In terms of I like that. It may be 10 back and forth before you get what you really want, but you don't. Basically, what I hear you saying is, don't settle for the first. You
never settle.
I mean,
if you're settling for the first, you should have Googled it.
Where's my mic? I need to drop it.
Well, technically it's your iPhone here, so
let's not do that.
All right.
That's it.
And I think it's important that you see it not as a Google search. That's when you use this tool. Google is a great, or I don't care, Bing, you name it, Yahoo, if you still do that. But I'm sure the listeners aren't using Yahoo. And if you are, don't. But you use that as a tool. Sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a drill. Okay. And sometimes you need a super powerful supercomputer, and that's where
Because
AI
it's
comes
going
in.
to Google. It's going and
Sure,
it's doing that for you. It just knows way better than we do
sure.
how to get very granular and find and synthesize it in like 2 seconds, which
And some advice here. This is something me because I've tested it and I've tried to break it. That's how you test anything. What are its limits? If you give it too many demands at the beginning of your prompt, maybe you know exactly the 10 things you want. It will often skip some of those, and it might give you 6 out of the 10. And you might think, oh, the AI is wrong. No, it's just it's processing as much as it can.
sure.
You just over asked it. And so what I always think of when I do an AI prompt, I always look for 5 to 6 really powerful things. But I in my brain have the other 4 things I know I want. And
Yeah.
what I do is I get those first 6, and then in my massaging
Go
conversation,
back.
I pull in and it's, oh, by the way, can you now add student friendly language? Could you give me a Lexile 300 two paragraph passage about this said topic?
Yeah.
But I don't ask for it at the beginning. I ask
So
for it to expand the lesson plan.
it's
So
almost like with us, it's overstim. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
sure,
It's like processing power still is finite. If you ask it too much,
sure.
doesn't mean it can't do it. It's the same way for us. Doesn't mean we can't do it. We just made a little time. You may need to chunk things.
Oh,
So
absolutely, absolutely. And there is some. If if I was to say one of the things I learned at being a veteran in any of my positions, whether it was a teacher, a site administrator, or now at the district level, is veterans in their positions tend to breathe and think before they act. And as a new teacher, for all you new teachers out there, it's a lot. It's one of the most important professions in the world,
yes.
and yet one of the most difficult. And there really isn't a very good. We try to onboard, we try to teach all of our tricks, but ultimately you got to do it yourself, and there's a lot of learning. And one of those veterans tips is to breathe a little bit, and part of that is wisdom and not making those mistakes that you made when you're a new teacher. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is using the speed of AI without checking, without really looking through what you're getting from AI in your pursuit of going fast. Realize if you're a new teacher right now and you're using AI to develop lesson plans, if you're using it to level text for your students, if you're using it to translate into any language you want, if you're using it to take a graphic that you love, a picture, a poster that you've used for years, and have the AI lift the text. Literally, it can see the text outside of the images. It can identify what is text and what is image. And then you can lift that text off, move it where you want it, translate it to whatever language. Like that was never possible.
Yeah.
I was having to recreate all of that when I looked at an image I liked. I like this graphic. Oh, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Now I'm going to try to build that in PowerPoint. Oh no, not anymore.
Yeah.
But with that, the speed at which you work has increased. That doesn't mean you need to do more. It doesn't. It means that you need to slow down. Have that work done for you, but use that veteran mentality of breathing a little bit and actually use this as a resource to do that. And there's just so many creative ways that you can use
Using
it.
and as you're saying that, I love that. I love that advice. Is it in the same way that when we say AI for the secondary teachers out there, it's like AI equals cheating for so many. It's where it's like, how many times have we heard
But
people?
there's truth to that.
They're 100%. But how many times do students they turn something in where they very obviously simply copied and pasted it down to the very bottom where it said this was generated via Chat GPT, or I mean, like they're even copying and pasting that. They did not look to compare to make sure it's accurate or anything like that. They just got it quickly. Boom. We need to make sure that we're not doing the same thing that we're telling our students not to do. Hey, you have to look at it. You have to analyze it. Is it accurate? Like I like what you said. Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Do that one task. It just gives you maybe a little bit more time to do it better.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean, oh, now I can do 16 tasks in the same time. You don't have to always do 16 tasks. Maybe it's the same task, better, and still save you time.
I was a first year teacher, and I fell in love with Excel for the simple reason is it helped me with my grading. Once I used Excel, it made me it gave me the ability to speed up and make sure my grades were accurate because it was all about
Sure.
the numbers. And it was a tool. It was a simple tool.
Yep.
I sped up my grading so I could use my time elsewhere.
Yeah.
And this is something that I could have used to lesson plan. I could have used to make things more engaging, authentic to my students,
Yeah.
and relevant. I mean, it truly is a game changer. And speaking of students, though, we do have to identify, though, and we talked about cheating a little bit.
Yeah. Some
If I mean, and I'm again, you know where Brent and I are talking right now, and I have two bright and capable children, one of which is in college and one of which is as a junior in high school. And throughout their educational journey, there were times where crosswords gave them points that told the parents that they know or they get an A in this class.
Yeah.
And we are still focused on product. And I will tell you, if that is your method as a teacher, AI is going to change your world because students can create products pretty darn easy.
Yep.
But the teachers that we love the most are the ones that make us think.
Yeah.
And I can do that as a teacher and go, okay, it's about the process, not the product. I want you to use AI for this, but I'm going to have you show me.
Yeah.
You're going to use this ongoing document and you're going to show me what AI suggestions did you get? What did you do with those suggestions? Okay. When you wrote and you put it back into AI and you asked it for revisions, what did you do with those revisions? And what articles did you read? And provide those links. All that journey is all process and thinking. And that is where we need to get.
We have to, as teachers, redefine the task, because AI, if you're just asking for a finished product, get the answer. Google can do that. AI can really do that. Mm-hmm. It's I think one of the best examples. Like if you say, write an essay on the Magna Carta, AI can do that. When you redefine the task or modify it such that, and compare that to an experience that you've had in your life or when you were in high school or whatever, something like that. Now that's information it doesn't have. You have to, that's got to come from you. So that's just a very simple example. Modifying because if we don't modify our task,
I understand.
They're going to cheat.
Absolutely. Spoiler alert. You can use AI as an educator to have it make those tasks AI proof. You don't have to do this yourself. That's this whole conversation. Is AI is your assistant. You want to make things AI proof? Ask it. Maybe that's one of the requests in your lesson plan or a student product. I want my student product to be AI proof. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be their final product.
How can I do that? How could I do that? How could I make this?
It'll give you suggestions.
How could I personalize this so that the students can't just simply do it and see what it comes up with? Because it will give you examples.
Absolutely. Here's an example. Take that Magna Carta, throw it into Notebook LM, have it create a study doc for you. Give that study doc to your students and say, all right, you have the Magna Carta in front of you. You also have the study doc. Okay. I want you to look at that study document and I want you to either argue against or prove where the AI is getting its information. Now your students are digging into the real Magna Carta, trying to either find the AI to be false or true, and learning a whole lot more than read it and answer the questions.
You want to talk about engagement?
Or share with your chat history. I want you to chat with it about the Magna Carta. Yeah. And you can just look at the students' questions that they're asking the AI to determine how much they're getting out of it. And tell them, I want you to copy and paste your chat history. That's more relevant as a skill for students. And all the time, they were actually digging into the article, making your history heart happy.
Which goes back to AI. The reality is, like it or not, AI is here.
It is.
And it's not going anywhere. I love the quote. It related to social media back when it was first coming out. Like, we don't teach kids to stay away from water. We teach them how to swim. And it's kind of this, that was in relation to social media, but now it's the same thing. And if we're thinking, well, I don't use any AI, I can virtually guarantee every single one of us, every single day, we're using AI. Did you ask Alexa this morning what the weather was? Guess what you just used? Did you use your maps to come to work?
Mm-hmm.
You guess what you use? I mean, like that's all AI. When you ask Siri to do something, that's AI. So it's everywhere. We just have to teach them how to responsibly and ethically.
And how to be creative with it, regardless of of your stance on AI. You have to admit that it can do some pretty creative things. And I think that it only validates our students, under the age of 13, needing to think critically and learning foundational skills of literacy, of critical thinking, and be given opportunities where the answer is not clear. And I think that AI in that case also are teachers that are thinking that way, have the mindset of, you know what, I'm going to think about this critically. I'm going to find new ways to do this. What am I not thinking of? Tell me what I'm not thinking of. Those teachers are going to find more success using AI
Yeah.
than those that kind of see it more black and white and linear. And so, but those are the skills that even if you decide not to become a teacher, which most of our kids will not become, you've taught them the skills of critical thinking
100%.
so that they can take and be successful adults in solving the bigger problems that we want them to. So it truly is what we want for our students. So we need to think about age appropriateness for AI. I'm a firm believer as a parent. I did not give my child a phone early. They did not have access to digital media and distraction. That was my thing. And with AI as well, that's, I would have not given that to my students. And legally, they should be 13 and above. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So we should be using safe AI, but also following those very clear guidelines at 13 and above. And the reason is they have the mature, well, I'm not going to say all 13-year-olds are mature, but they're moving along the
They're
line.
more likely.
Yeah, they're more likely to have the maturity to be able to discern what they're getting and to be able to process that. And so, we're using AI and at the elementary setting and even middle school for teachers to make things more engaging and maybe some guided AI. In high school, that's a little bit different. That's where we want them experiencing it, because in 4 years they're going into the workforce, or they're going to college, where right now I have a college freshman and their school encourages the use of AI. And so that's what's happening in the post-secondary, and it's happening in the job market because that's what they're asking.
So if you hide them and don't teach them how to do it now, we're doing them a disservice.
Correct.
For when they get to post.
But this is not so exciting that we need to push this down to younger students. That's I want to make sure that is not that is absolutely
I
clear.
agree with. I think wrapping this up, because we could keep going for.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But it's like my takeaways from this, and I would just, to summarize, it's like, number one, Notebook LM. If you've not,
There'll be more of them coming, I'm sure.
yeah, exactly. Notebook LM. I think it's .google.com. Anyway, Google Notebook LM. That's something because that's going to be able to create those study docs, to create the podcast, something like that. But the second thing, just if you haven't tried this yet, have the conversations. That's what I'm taking away from this in terms of, it's not a Google search. It's a conversation. Treat it like your virtual assistant, because that literally is what it is. In the same way that you have your phone and you talk to Siri and you talk to Alexa, those are such basic examples in terms of what's the weather, who won the game today, set a timer for 20 minutes. I mean, that's such basic, whereas ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, it's literally like you're talking to a person. And it's getting better and better and better. So, and not to accept the first answer.
Never accept the first answer.
It's just go back.
Unless you're Googling.
Yeah. Because it's going to give you pretty much the same answer every time.
Oh, spoiler alert too. Now, when you Google anything, the first thing you see is the AI scraping all those sources and providing you better directions. So
it's true.
Technically,
very top.
Every
time you Google, you're using some
AI.
Well, Amazon now. If you go to buy a book and you go down to the review section, at the very top of every single book, they have AI generated. They've taken all of the reviews and they have compiled an AI generated overview, a summary.
And we all appreciate it.
100%. It's like, I'm reading that first. So anyway, John, thank you, man. This is good. Thank you for taking the time. Sorry it took 120 episodes for the invite.
Saving hopefully it's the best for last. This is Brent's last podcast.
It was worth the wait.
And if you waited this long and you're still listening, one, I appreciate what you do for students. And I encourage you to play in a safe manner with AI and be critical of it. And that's how I've started. And I'm still critical of it. It's there as a tool, not as a distraction.
It's one of the things that I appreciate about, many things I appreciate about you, John, is you're not, and you mentioned this earlier, it's not just, hey, jump in. You're very cautious in terms of this because, again, in the same way we've talked about social media, if you're not cautious, it can be dangerous. Same type of thing. We don't want kids, like you mentioned, young
Absolutely.
kids uploading random stuff in there. In the same way, don't give away your password, don't go give away your phone number, things like that. So, but as adults,
Mhm.
wade in, have a conversation, because if you're not tapping into the power that this is, we're kind of robbing ourselves of the opportunities to be better for kids from an engagement standpoint, a time saving standpoint, a relational standpoint. So
And if I gave one last piece of advice is if you work in a grade level or in a department, do this together, one computer, all around that computer, and using the power of collaboration with
I
your
like that.
peers, because
They're going to
there's
come up with prompts.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and then you're stronger together. Collaboration is so key to student learning. But now you're using that as another collaborative partner. So I'm not encouraging each and individual teacher to go AI crazy. I still think there's power in numbers. There's power in the team.
Yeah.
And so using that together, it only amplifies your team.
I like it. I love it. Thank you, John.
All right.
And everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for waiting between episode 119 and 120. Hopefully it was worth the wait. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe in any, whether it's iTunes, Amazon Music, everywhere podcasts, you can get them. You can also listen on my website at the podcast page on brentcoley.com. Once again, thanks everyone. And until next time, have a good one.